for joining us. We are also joined by Andrew K.P. Lung, China strategist located in Hong Kong. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us once again. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Waking up this morning, looking at these stock numbers, obviously these tariffs were imposed by China a day after the US imposed theirs. Is China making the right decisions economically, imposing these reciprocal tariff market, looking at these numbers today?
Well, of course, China, being the world's largest trader and manufacturer, with trading footprints all over the world, is likely to be hit hard, not by direct tariffs on China, as a result of the disruption upheaval in the world supply and value chain, in which China is fully embedded, no matter which market you're talking about. So I think China is also, of course, suffering from these impacts. But on the other hand, compared with any other nation, China for a time since Trump act shortly after the time already that China towards technological self-reliance as well as internal consumption and services away from exports, but without giving up the China's role as the moment, because just products around the world, China is not marked made in China. It's logistics, including Hong Kong, of course, is pivoting, trying to sell exports because I mean, just par excellence. Of course, as I said, and they all over the world, some sectors of the market as ranging from 2.5% to 5 to even 5%. So I think that this is impact on China, that exporting market for China is no. It's also the global south, even though the U.S. market still accounts for a size has years, hostility of the United States.
What can you tell me about the rest of Asia and the impact that this these plummets are going to have? You've got Japan suffering huge slump. So what are these numbers in Indo-Pacific region in broadly, and the long-term effects of it as well?
If you look at the Asian on the first, the country that depends on the American market more foremost is Vietnam. A lot have been direct to Vietnam, has been for some time. But now, Trump has across the board, and if you look are calculated, some countries 4%, some countries are 25%, and the formula is full of symbols, but actually very simple. It is the deficits actually one country the total on that sort of high, but then respond the party chief just finished with Trump offering to negotiate, and of course there are American tariffs. There are lots of domestic tariffs in Vietnam on American imports. So Vietnam said, well, we're going to reduce all those imports to zero if the United States act likewise. So it seems to be a win-win situation. But then this formula cannot be replicated all fours with in the case of China, for example, because the United States to China except aircraft, agricultural products. So I think each country should be different. But as far as Hong Kong is concerned, in fact, Hong Kong itself does not have a trade a deficit in our favor. In fact, the Americans' trade relationship with Hong Kong is positive. There are more stuff in Hong Kong in terms of services, in terms of equipment, compared with what Hong Kong sells to the United States. But still, Hong Kong is caught because as a result of this as China anti-China strategy, Hong Kong is treated as part of China anymore, not as an independent entity.
Andrew, I just want to read some news that is coming in from billionaire tycoon Bill Ackman, who actually endorsed Donald Trump's run for president. He has described the United States' actions as an economic nuclear war on every country in the world. Business investment will grind to a halt, apparently. This also follows the Goldman Sachs, one of the world's top investment banks, releasing the statement and raising the risk of a US recession to 45%. This also comes along with JP Morgan's statement, another top investment bank, which now sees a 60% chance of a US and global recession. Andrew, what can you tell me about this statement? What does a global recession mean for not just the people of Asia, which are being affected by these stock crashes, but the world?
Well, naturally, this is not the first time the United States is imposing across-the-board tariffs on imports. Think the 1930s in terms of so-called the Smoot, S-M-O-O-T, Smoot-Hawley Act, H-A-U-T-Y, I think, Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930, on the verge of the Great Depression of the United States. And of course, the Great Depression already started, and then led to the American producers, particularly the agricultural sector, wanting more protection. And as a result, I think President Hoover, I believe, at that time, followed suit and imposed these tariffs, which deepened the American depression in the 1934, I think, starting in 1934. So this is not the first time, but this time around, as at that time, the world, even though already interconnected, but compared to now, it's even deeply embedded, and there are supply and value chains all intertwined, and so that's no surprise that the world's markets completely rattled. But on the other hand, one has got to understand why the Trump administration is doing this. Even though there are crazy consequences, people say, well, the administration is crazy, but well, it's sometimes if you look at it, the dynamics is less crazy than a lot of people think. Because one of the things that challenges Americans' dominance, Americans' hegemony, are the two deficits. First of all, the trade deficit, which Trump is trying to reverse with tariffs. Now, whether or not that's going to succeed is beside the point, because by imposing tariffs on goods, he's ignoring Americans' surplus in services. American enjoys huge surpluses in services, financial services, sort of technical services and so on. But that's totally ignored. He just concentrates on goods. Now, be that as it may, he's trying to reverse the trade deficit, at least on goods, with tariffs across the board, because these trade deficits is not just one country with many other countries. And in fact, he has gone to the extreme of even imposing the tariff, as I said, calculated by the so-called trade divided by the deficit over the amount of trade.
Yes.
But curiously, they also apply to some Penguin Islands. But anyway, I think that China is prepared for this, as I said, by pivoting towards internal consumption. But the smaller countries will be very, very hard hit, particularly economies depending on one or two trade sectors. And if these sectors are totally demolished or totally disrupted, and that would put a great deal of pressure on the smaller countries. But what is more, Americans, the Trump administration, by going across the board, imposing tariffs on allies and friends and adversaries alike, in the hope of redressing these so-called trade deficits, ignoring surpluses on services. Is causing American dearly in terms of American leadership of a so-called rule-based order. Now Trump is introducing the rules of the jungle. He's chucking out the World Trade Organization rules. In fact, he's undermined the World Trade Organization mechanism for resolution by not supplying judges, and he's withdrawing from international institutions. He's using bullying tactics against Greenland or even Canada
Yes.
and the European Union. So I think that this so-called American-led world, a liberal world order, is now torn to pieces. And then Americans' allies, as well as traditional allies, and also not so much allies, they're all rallying and also maybe cooperating with one another as to find a way out. Some, as I said, in the case of Vietnam, is trying to negotiate, but
Yes.
there is a
Andrew,
increased solidarity amongst these nations.
I just wanted to ask one quick final question. How does Trump's style, what Trump's style of leadership, obviously, kind of, we've heard today that he's been kind of laughing, or he kind of said, gloating about 50 different countries calling him up and trying to negotiate trade. You also have him pitching a possible idea for the US acquisition of TikTok to negotiate China's tariffs. What does this say about how much does Trump's style of leadership and economic policy have to do with these Asian markets plunging?
Well, Trump believes that the United States have not been using its dominance profitably enough. In his view, American has been shortchanged by its trading partners. He doesn't believe in free trade. He believes in transactional business, and he views any kind of deficit, even limited goods, as a reflection of American being shortchanged. So that's his style. But then what is driving him are the worrying two deficits. deficits, the trade deficits, as well as the budget deficits. As the budget deficits are concerned, is trying to revamp and also cutting jobs all over the place in the federal administration, using Elon Musk, Dodge, at the Department of Efficiency. And as for trade deficit, is relying on his tariffs. So it's not just his character. I mean, he believes that would strategy would reduce these deficits, restore American dominance. Because if you don't really reduce these deficits, the interest paid on the deficits would erode the United States' ability to finance its various other endeavors, including foreign policy and the military and so on.
Andrew KP Lung,
character.
thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, it is 12 o'clock, and that is all we have time for. We will continue to